faithfully delivering value by exploring great books worldwide. Hi, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today we're diving into the book The World's Only You, with the subtitle The Truth Behind the Unique Behaviors of People with Autism. Autism, also known as autistic disorder, is a developmental disorder of the central nervous system, typically emerging in childhood. The CDC estimated that 1 in 50 preschool children is affected, and autistic kids often show severe social and communication challenges. These children also frequently exhibit odd, repetitive, and stereotyped behaviors, like constantly rocking their bodies, biting clothes, or always arranging things in a fixed order. In many people's eyes, autistic children are seen as outsiders. Folks approach them with a mix of sympathy and fear, avoiding them and their families, even many professionals. For example, many doctors and teachers in autism diagnosis and intervention view autistic kids' behaviors as flaws and quirks, trying to eliminate them as if fixing a machine to cure the child. Hmm. This book marks a major shift in modern autism research and intervention. The author, Barry Present, is a world-renowned autism expert with a PhD in child development and speech pathology, who won the 2005 Princeton University Eden Foundation Lifetime Achievement Award in Autism Research. Autism Research, ASHNSR, TS. In 2014, he received the honors of the American Speech-Language Hearing Association, based on over 40 years of teaching, research, and clinical experience in autism. Yeah, the author argues that so-called autistic behaviors shouldn't be seen as just pathology, but as coping strategies autistic folks use to adapt to a chaotic world and try to communicate. Our goal isn't to just fix them or erase their behaviors, but to understand the reasons behind their actions, then change our own attitudes to support them better. Next, I'll break it down into 2 parts to share the book's key ideas. Part 1 focuses on understanding autism, mainly exploring the reasons behind typical autistic behaviors in children. Part 2 discusses how to better help autistic children from the perspectives of professionals and families. Let's start with Part 1, understanding autism, to see what's behind those typical behaviors. Physiologically, children with autism have structural defects in their neural systems, making them extra sensitive and fragile. So, their ability to handle environmental stimuli and stress is much weaker than most people. For example, you might think it's a bit noisy during PE class in the gym, but for many autistic kids, that kind of noise might be way beyond what they can handle. Besides sounds, temperature, light, and smells. Pretty much everything in life can become a stressor for autistic children. The biggest stressor is the people around them. For most folks, understanding others comes naturally, like interpreting their words or reading their emotions through facial expressions and gestures. But for autistic individuals, these things are way harder. One autistic person once described the biggest challenge of his daily life. I have to constantly figure out what people approaching me intend to do. Because predicting others' behavior is so tough for me, their actions often seem sudden and feel like a threat. And when we're stressed, we get anxious and scared. But for autistic folks, anxiety and fear are pretty much constant companions. Another autistic person described his life like this: "My main emotion is, and always has been, fear." And many typical autistic behaviors are actually coping strategies autistic people use to manage their anxiety and fear. To truly understand the struggles of autistic individuals, we need to grasp the emotions and motivations behind their behaviors. For instance, autistic children often show repetitive, stereotyped behaviors, which are often seen as a defining feature of autism. For example, the author observed that many autistic kids always move in specific ways. Some carry familiar items everywhere. Some watch the same cartoon over and over. Some only eat certain foods or insist on sitting in the same seat daily. These repetitive, stereotyped behaviors are autistic children's way of regulating their emotions by controlling environmental consistency. It's not a pathological symptom. It's a coping strategy. The book talks about a kid named Clayton who, when he comes home, always checks every room's windows and pulls all the curtains to exactly the same height. Why is that? He's striving to control his environment, making it predictable and visually balanced to feel comfortable. When autistic children intensely pursue predictable order to understand their surroundings, a sudden change can leave them helpless. The author describes an 11-year-old autistic girl, Lucy, in the book. Her teachers reported she's highly aggressive, often suddenly pouncing on teachers and therapists, grabbing their faces and necks. We, we, Through a morning of observation, the author discovered the reason behind Lucy's aggression. During a fixed routine activity, the therapist changed instructions without any warning. This abrupt change left Lucy completely lost. Lucy instantly lunged at the therapist, tearing his shirt in protest. To test this conclusion, that afternoon when a teacher took Lucy on their routine hallway walk, the author suggested changing the usual route. Sure enough, when the teacher did this, Lucy immediately got angry, rushed at her, and grabbed her neck and collar, just like she did with the therapist that morning. So grabbing clothes isn't just aggression, it's Lucy's way of asking for help when utterly confused. When an unexpected disruption occurs during a familiar activity, Lucy enters a state of high panic, triggering this reaction. When any of us feel life's order disrupted and surroundings out of control, it sparks anxiety and fear. Autistic people have much lower reaction thresholds, so they're often highly panicked. Behind their unusual or extreme behaviors lies their effort to restore order. Besides repetitive behaviors, many autistic individuals have unique interests. They intensely fixate on things like skyscrapers, specific animals, geographical phenomena, certain music, train tracks, or highway exits. The author notes that focusing on a fixed object also gives them a sense of control and security. For many autistic kids, bringing favorite toys to activities like dining out, family gatherings, or school events, or choosing activities they're interested in helps them self-regulate. Like 5-year-old Winnie, who was fascinated by a particular brand of vacuum cleaner, his mom came up with an idea. She collected pictures of that brand's vacuums and bound them into a book called Winnie's Happy Book. When Winnie felt anxious at school and needed to leave class, he'd ask the teacher for this book, sit aside to look through it for a few minutes, calm down, and return to class. Some interests fade quickly, while others last decades. Strong interests might hint at future careers. A kid into seasonings might become a chef. One passionate about music could be a musician. A train enthusiast might work as a conductor or engineer. For instance, Stanford James, an autistic boy obsessed with trains since childhood, learned Chicago's complex transit routes and schedules by heart with his mom's support. His job involved finding transit routes and schedules for customers. Stanford excelled at work and even won the local transit department's Employee of the Year award. If repetitive behaviors and special interests are autistic individuals' strategies to maintain control and reduce stress, then echolalia, another key autism trait, is their attempt to communicate, even when they can speak normally. Autistic children often endlessly repeat words, phrases, or sentences, clinically termed echolalia. Anything can become their echo source. Cartoon clips, subway ads, parents' greetings, especially words heard during intense excitement, pain, or joy, can all trigger echolalia. For years, teachers and therapists treated echolalia negatively. They called it foolish talk. Some professionals taught parents to scold kids. Don't talk nonsense, to silence them. Some teachers even squeezed lemon juice into children's mouths as punishment for echolalia. But the author discovered in research that echolalia isn't meaningless random behavior. It's functional echolalia, autistic children's way of trying to communicate. Sometimes kids use echolalia to express emotions, like fear. Once, the author visited a school to see an autistic girl named Eliza.
As the author approached Eliza, her face suddenly showed terror, and she kept repeating, "Broken glass, broken glass."
Even though the author then approached her in the kindest, gentlest way and sat beside her, she still said, broken glass, while glancing sideways. Only when the teacher told Eliza, "Don't worry, Barry is a good guy. He's just here to see you today," did she gradually calm down. Later, the teacher explained, Eliza had been hurt by broken glass on the playground 2 years earlier. Since then, she'd used broken glass to express her anxiety or fear. When a stranger approached, she instinctively felt fear. The teacher saying Barry was good and just visiting partly eased that fear, allowing her to calm down. Of course, some echolalia also expresses joy. The book tells of 4-year-old David, fascinated by textures and tactile sensations. Once, the author had David and classmates use sponge balls dipped in paint for art. After class, David found sponge scraps on the classroom floor. David picked up each sponge piece, examined it, then rubbed between thumb and finger to enjoy the texture. The author prompted, "David, this is a piece of sponge." David echoed, "This is a piece of sponge. This is a piece of sponge." The sponge texture on his fingers and vocalizing brought him great pleasure. He tightly grasped sponges, looked at others on the floor, and began tiptoe dancing while chanting, "This is a piece of sponge. This is a piece of sponge. Sponge." And next day when David entered, though the floor was empty, he went exactly to yesterday's sponge spot. Again, he tiptoed, danced, and echoed, "This is a piece of sponge, sponge. This is a piece of sponge." David used echolalia to tell a happy story. Beyond emotions, autistic children sometimes use it to convey specific information. For example, an autistic kid named Jeff one day made a sound at every adult in school over and over. "Dua." The next day, it continued. The teacher was clueless, so she called his mom, who instantly replied, "He might have a cold, because whenever Jeff gets sick, I tell him to open his mouth and say, ah." So Jeff was telling the teachers he's sick, he's got a cold. He might not be able to explain his discomfort normally, so he acted out this scene to communicate he's unwell. Sometimes echolalia shares what's on their mind, like David, who loved sponge balls. Whenever teachers scolded David, he'd circle them, echoing their warning tone. "No slamming doors! No peeing on walls!" This showed he understood he was being reprimanded for his current actions. And, just like door slamming or wall peeing, he was doing something forbidden in class. He spoke this way to say in his own terms, "I get it." Whether expressing feelings or confirming info, autistic kids use echolalia to communicate. In other words, they use language just like us normal folks for the same reasons. All we need to do is listen, observe, and pay attention. All right, that wraps up part 1. We covered how autistic individuals have neurological dysfunctions and low stress thresholds, often feeling fear, how repetitive behaviors and fixations bring control and security. And echolalia is their unique way of trying to communicate. These behaviors shouldn't be erased but observed. We must understand their reasons and motivations. Now let's move to part 2, how to help autistic people. We'll explore adjustments from both professionals, teachers, therapists, and families to provide real support. When a child's first diagnosed, parents' first thought is usually to seek professional help. These pros include special ed teachers and autism intervention therapists. Contrary to popular belief, helping autistic individuals isn't just about having professional expertise or training. What matters more than technical skills is relational virtue, an extraordinary talent that can be seen as a gift. These individuals have an innate ability to connect with kids within just 5 to 10 minutes. Regardless of their knowledge or training level, they naturally form bonds with autistic children. Sometimes when schools change teachers, kids become more anxious and distressed. But other times, new teachers immediately build rapport, making the child happy and relaxed. In the latter case, the teacher possesses relational virtue, which can be transformative. Like the story in the book about Justin, an autistic boy, and his tutor, Denise. Denise had no formal autism training or experience, yet she uniquely solved a major problem. Justin loved drawing, but only sketched cartoon characters like Mickey Mouse. He stubbornly refused his parents' requests to diversify. Knowing Justin loved animals, Denise proposed if he drew non-cartoon subjects like landscapes, she'd meow like a cat. Justin happily accepted this deal. This novel strategy helped Justin explore new art forms, made learning fun, and deepened their bond. True relational virtue is rare, but others compensate through strong willingness to learn, seeking parental guidance to grow. The author calls these cultivated relational virtue practitioners. They positively transform autistic children's lives. But those lacking relational virtue worsen the situation. They only report children's difficulties negatively. They paint grim pictures of incapabilities while ignoring the child's strengths. These areas of strength could play a crucial role in the child's future life, like special interests, talents, or excellent qualities. People lacking relational virtue often rely on discipline and punishment to regulate autistic children's behavior. The author once visited a special education school and encountered a school official who was taking an autistic boy from the classroom to the gym. The child instantly showed terror and anxiety on his face. A teacher nearby reminded the official that the boy struggled with noisy, crowded places, but the official ignored it, grabbed the child under his arm, and dragged him along. And, at the gym, he said, "At this school, anyone who disobeys orders will be intervened with like this." This official ignored the child's humanity and naturally didn't realize how much harm his brutality would cause. The author once asked parents of autistic children what the most important quality is for professionals who work and learn with their children. And um, there was a mother of an autistic child in his 20s. She said, "What we value most is that they don't judge us, but walk alongside us." This is the best summary of relational virtue. In fact, parents are more important than professionals in the intervention for autistic children. They are the ones who spend the most time with the child and are the most trusted. They can do much more than professionals. So, in his 40-year research career, the author closely interacted with many autistic families and found that parents who give enough patience and support, striving in the right direction, achieve rewarding outcomes. Based on their experiences, the author summarized some advice for parents of autistic individuals. The top three are most important, and the first is to trust your intuition. Perhaps experts do understand autism better than parents, but parents understand their own child better than experts. No one is more adept than parents at catching and recognizing subtle differences in a child's behavior, nor more attuned to their emotions or better at interpreting a subtle facial expression. The book mentions David and Susan, parents of an autistic boy, who started actively engaging their sons in outdoor activities after the diagnosis, using this as a form of therapy. Once, they went to a park for a 1.6-kilometer hike and discovered the kids loved it. Walking really helped regulate their emotions. So, when the boys were in their teens, David and Susan planned a full 14.5-kilometer hiking trip. The boys' therapist had sternly warned David and Susan, believing the kids' physical condition couldn't handle long hikes and that they'd wander aimlessly like many autistic kids and get lost. What? What a cat. David and Susan ignored the therapist's advice, trusting their own judgment. They led the boys through the tough journey and finished the trip. It turns out they were absolutely right.
The hike ignited the boys' vitality. They thoroughly enjoyed the journey, the exercise, even the physical challenge.
When professional advice clashes with parental intuition, how do you choose? Susan explained. She said, "I heard professionals talk about the boys' flaws and shortcomings. Those views trapped me, making me almost forget that every child has endless potential. But when I tossed those views aside and bravely followed my instincts, I was amazed to find everything was possible." The second piece of advice for parents: avoid negative environments and live in the present. When a child's diagnosed with autism, parents' mindsets naturally shift. They quickly sense others' intentional or unintentional distancing, and these relational changes, plus ensuing challenges, can plunge parents into pain and confusion. That's why finding a supportive group is crucial. It could be doctors, teachers, or other parents with similar experiences. These groups should radiate positive energy, not be filled with pessimistic complaints and despairing rants. One autistic child's father said, "We know exactly what daily hardships to expect. We don't need others reminding and amplifying them. And we want people to share positive thoughts with us and celebrate every tiny progress." But being positive doesn't mean blind optimism or avoiding truth. Positivity means those around you can see problems while also spotting the child's progress and potential. As another mom said, "I'm not asking you to lie, but to gently and honestly tell me both current issues and future possibilities." Raising an autistic child is inevitably a long, tough journey. Parents should learn to release emotional pressure timely. Living in the present is a great approach. For instance, many parents feel embarrassed by their child's public outbursts. But veterans often say, "You might be overthinking this." Sometimes, a child's unique behaviors can be met with humor. The book shares a story. Parents took their young autistic son to a supermarket while toilet training him. Passing the toilet aisle, remembering parental encouragement, the boy suddenly wanted to practice his new skill. He walked toward a display toilet. The parents couldn't stop him and exchanged a glance. They quickly decided to whisk him away. Recalling it later, they laughed heartily. As a mother of an 8-year-old autistic boy said, "Parents should live present moment, plan for the future without being chained by it, taking life step by step." The third and most crucial advice: let go of the obsession with curing autism. Focus on the child themselves. The author notes, autism is a complex neurological disorder. Note it's a congenital condition, not a disease. Diseases can be cured, conditions cannot. Current medical research remains powerless against this phenomenon. A 2013 study found only a tiny fraction of children ever outgrow clinical autism definitions. It also noted no way exists to predict or explain which children recover or why. The author urges parents to set aside curative expectations. Parents fixated solely on curing autism, obsessing over behavior reduction, will bear emotional and financial burdens. Children also feel this tension. Conversely, parents accepting their child wholly, celebrating small progress, find immense joy in daily life. The author adds, since autism cures are extremely rare, experts claiming otherwise are untrustworthy. Actually, whether autistic individuals have high self-efficacy or enjoy a high-quality life isn't closely tied to being cured. Remember Justin from the cat meowing story, the art-loving boy? Diagnosed with autism at 2, Justin became a warm, humorous artist in his 20s who loves teaching kids to draw. His transformation largely credits his parents' mindset shift and tremendous effort. They tried influencing him through various means, hoping he'd live normally. They took Justin to social events, cultivated interaction habits, arranged peer meetups, creating environments mimicking typical behavior. But time proved these attempts to change Justin's lifestyle didn't work. Later, they fully accepted his uniqueness, encouraging authentic self-expression, supporting solitude, allowing movie line repetitions and babbling. While hosting guests downstairs, they'd hear sudden loud screams upstairs, Justin playing with mental images, and just smile knowingly, understanding this autism lifestyle. Discovering Justin's art passion, they spent years trial and erroring schools and teachers, even moving 3 times to support him into a productive life. Observe closely, and you'll see Justin's uniqueness. His dad said, his success comes precisely because of these traits, not from correcting them. This embodies the book's title. Every autistic person is this world's unique existence. Their individuality deserves understanding and respect. Finally, quoting an autistic voice from the book, "Don't always touch me or lecture me. Too many words, just be present." support me quietly. And that concludes our exploration of the world's only you. Reading notes are below the audio. We'll see you next time.